Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining today's session. This is going to be session 3, so we're going to talk about the integration with our gateways. Okay, all right. So good to be here with you guys. All right, now I think this is about the time for us to get started. Let's have a check here. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the integration between the P-Series system and our gateways. We actually have a couple of options there. If you guys take a look on our website, yeastar.com, pretty sure you can find we have different models of the gateways. We have the gateway for analog, which is the TA series. We also have the gateway for digital, for example, like a TE series or TB series for E1 and BRI. And of course, we also get the cordless solution, which is the TG gateway, the TG series. That's totally the cordless solution. You're going to use that gateway with your SIM cards for the cordless connection. So that will be our gateways. Now, let's just start with the TA gateway first, okay? By the way, guys, about the TA gateway, I'm sorry, currently I don't have a live demo of the TA series, so I'm going to use a couple of pages to explain how do we figure out the integration with our TA series gateway. And later on, when we talk about the digital gateway and the GSM gateway, I'm going to jump into the live demo. Okay, so let's get started with this one, which is TA FXS gateway. So about the TA series, oh well, about analog. Anything about analog, we got the two options. Option 1 is gonna be the FXS, and option 2 will be FXO, right? So the FXS means something for our terminals, something for the endpoints, right? So this gateway is the same thing. We got the two options for you guys. Option 1 is going to be TA FXS gateway, and this is exactly the gateway, exactly the model which we're going to use it for the connectivity with our analog endpoints, which means if you have a bunch of endpoints, you're actually going to use our TA FXS gateway. Okay. Wait a second. Some of you guys told me you cannot see my screen sharing. Wait a second. I think now you guys can see it, right? Can you see this? All right. By the way, thank you for the feedback. Thank you. Okay. Now let's just get back here. Okay. So as I mentioned about the TA series, we got two options. Option 1 will be the FXS gateway, and this is just a model for helping us to connect with our endpoints. And I guess the FXS gateway, it's so popular. Pretty sure you can find this gateway almost everywhere. For example, like if we got a project for school, we got a project for hospitality, which is for hotel, or maybe we got a project for healthcare. Anyway, you can find the FXS gateway because in those areas, in those application scenarios, I mean, the analog terminals are so popular. For example, if we're in the hotel, pretty sure the hotel room guest phone will be the analog based, right? Even for school, for some elementary school or universities, still people are willing to use the traditional analog phones because this is cheaper. This is absolutely cheaper, save their budget, right? So it's quite popular. That's why I mentioned the FXS gateway actually is the most popular model in the market. But anyway, let's just take a look. So to be very honest about this part of configuration, we have two options for you guys. Option 1, which is very simple, very easy, it's called auto provisioning. I'm pretty sure you guys already get some information from the P-Series auto provisioning configuration panel, right? Every single time if you try to configure the auto provisioning on the P-Series system, I'm pretty sure you guys can see there's one more option, which is a gateway, which is a Yeastar. I mean, those supported vendors, you can see one of those vendors is called Yeastar. That's actually the TA-FXS gateway. So that's the easiest way for us to figure out this deployment. And that's quite popular for most of our cases. Like I said, if we're going to deploy the P-Series system with our gateway with a bunch of analog terminals in this particular area for the whole project, anyway, 9 times out of 10, we're going to use the auto provisioning, which is easy, which is simple, because you only need to click on your mouse, figuring out the auto provisioning. That's it. And later on, we're going to be able to activate every single one of our interfaces on the TA-FXS gateway. We're just going to assign the extension number particularly on every single one of them. Then the next step will be pretty simple, which is plug and play. You will just need to take your analog phones, connect them with your interfaces on the gateway. That's it. So this is the easiest way for us to figure out integration. However, another option might be a little bit tricky, which is going to be we're actually going to figure out the SIP connection. All right, not completely the auto provisioning. The auto provisioning is kind of like a phone deployment. It's not a SIP chunk. It's not a SIP connection. All right, so let's just keep going. Now here, how do we connect the TA-FXS gateway with our P-Series system? Like I mentioned, the previous one is the first option, which is quite popular, but actually we will have some other options for figuring out this. All right, first of all, check on this. It's actually, this is like the option 2, like I mentioned. It's based on SIP, but it's not going to be a SIP chunk. All right, this is like a SIP register mode, or maybe you can call this is like a port register mode. I'm sorry. So this is what it is. Some points I just posted here, you guys can see it's not a SIP chunk first of all. It's just a port register mode. All right, so it's not a SIP chunk. Technically, it's not a SIP chunk between the gateway and the PBX because we don't want to make things so complicated. If we create a SIP chunk between the gateway and the PBX, that'll be really complex. I mean, think about it. That's kind of like every single time if you try to make use of your gateway for making a call, well, you're supposed to go through the SIP chunk first. That's an external call for your PBX. That's so complicated. So this is not a SIP chunk. All right. And by the way, another one here is going to be this. Each FXS port use that VoIP server setting will register to the PBX extension. That's what it is. So this is more like a port match. I would like to call this is more like a port match. Every single one of our port will be matched on our PBX to the exact extension. That's kind of like this. All right. So here we go. This is the way how we configure this. All right. Step 1, we're gonna go jump into the P-Series system, go check on extension. All right. We're basically gonna create an extension. Absolutely right. So you will have some basic information for this particular extension. This is something we mentioned in the previous session, right? Not a big deal. It's exactly the way how we configure an extension. We got the username, we got the extension information, something like this. Then we just save it. All right. So this is pretty simple. Then the next step is we're supposed to log into the TA-FXS gateway. And also, by the way, the default mode for your TA-FXS gateway, I guess, is it's DHCP mode. All right, you guys need to be careful with this. I think if you got a brand new TA-FXS gateway, especially like a TA400 or TA100, you know, smaller size, the smaller model, the default configuration is under DHCP mode. So you're supposed to get the IP address from the DHCP server. That's what it is. But however, if you got a big model like a TA1600, I'm sorry, you got a big model, TA1600 or TA2400 or even TA3200, the big one, the big guy. If you got that big model, you will have the default IP address, which is 192.168.5.150. Same as URL, just like what we have with our PBX. So you're going to use the default IP address to jump into the gateway. Start your configuration. All right. Then we jump into our gateway. We simply just need to go check on the top side banner on my right hand. You guys can see gateway. Go click on that. That's exactly the place where you will need to go click. Then we go for the VoIP settings. All right, so VoIP settings here, we are basically gonna add a VoIP server for this gateway, just like I mentioned. So we go click on add there. You can see here, VoIP server settings here. You got a bunch of options there. So you can choose one of them, go click on edit. And the server name here, you can just name whatever you prefer, but pretty sure we're just gonna name it as the PBX name, which is P570, 2P570, whatever, right? Then we're gonna need to enter the IP address of our, P570. That's it, because that's gonna be the server, right? And the register mode here, we will just need to choose port register. So this is something we need to be a little bit careful, but generally speaking, I guess this is not that complex, pretty easy, right? A few steps there, you guys just need to be a little bit careful. And then we move to the next step. So next step, we're just gonna go check on same as URL. We go click on gateway, then we go check on port list. All right. So port list here, we will just need to activate a particular interface one by one, because this is the FXS gateway, right? So for example, if this is TA8 TA800. Let's see, this model is TA800. So we're going to be able to have 8 FXS interfaces right on the front side panel. That's it. So when you click on port list, pretty sure you will see all these interfaces. All the details of your FXS interfaces are going to be posted on this panel. So you can just pick one of them. All right, like I just want to activate the port number 1. So I would just need to go click on edit. Then over here, I will simply need to add some information, which is exactly the extension information I get from my P-Series system. So this is also the reason why I just mentioned at the very beginning. This is kind of like a match, port match. We're just going to match this particular interface to one of my extensions on the P-Series system by going through the SIP, right? So that's what it is. This is port register, just like this. All right. So pretty simple. Right over here, we will just need to add some details, which you get from the P-Series system, because previously we just created an extension on the P-Series system. Pretty sure we have a bunch of extension information. We got all of our extension information. Then we just back over here, drop those information on this particular port. For example, like port number 1. Then we're just gonna go click on save. So that's the way how we figure this out. All right. And the next step will be the DEL pattern configuration. Pretty sure we also need to do this because we already activate this particular interface, match it with our extension. Then we need to tell our gateway how to make an external call, right? So we need the DEL pattern here. So you go click on DEL pattern template here. You can see the DEL pattern here. The default DEL pattern, by the way, is just a dot. Well, dot means it could be anything, whatever it is, right? So you can just keep it this way. Not a problem. Not a problem. Unless you have some special requirement. But I guess usually we just keep the default one. That's fine, because this is just a gateway for helping us to connect a bunch of analog terminals, right? We don't have any additional special requirement. So I guess mostly we can just keep the default one like this. Not a problem, totally. Then simply just go click on save, move to the next step. Just going forward. Okay. Next step, just back to the status. On your gateway, I guess the interface of the gateway, the configuration interface, configuration portal for the gateway is much easier than the P-Series system. Only a few options when you log into the system. As you can see there, only a few categories. So you can simply go click on status there on the top side. Then over here, you can just figure out this port, whether this port is connected or it is not connected. Anyway, you can just figure it out here. So the status tells you it's okay, it's connected. All right, so this is registered. And the phone status is connected. That means you already got the physical connection figured. All right, you got the analog phone connected with this interface. So it just shows you it's connected. All right. Now, next step, you can just grab your phone for making a call. That's basically what it is about this FXS port register. And I'm going to show you guys another example with the live demo, which is the auto provisioning configuration. So let's just back to the live demo. So one more option for us to figure out the gateway, the TA-FXS gateway configuration integration is going to be the auto provisioning. That's much easier. So you can simply jump into your P-Series system, check on auto provisioning. Here you guys can see gateways, right? I'm pretty sure this is much easier. And to be very honest, me personally, I would like to use this solution. I would like to choose this for the gateway deployment. That's much easier. So what we're supposed to do now is simply we will just need to make sure our gateway and the P-Series system are deployed in the same local area network, which is LAN, in the same LAN. That's very important. And then you don't have to do anything because you know the way how the auto provisioning works, right? So you don't have to do anything there. You just get your gateway being connected, physical connected. All right, make sure everything's all set there. Then you back on the P-Series system, go click on gateways here. So you're going to be able to see the gateway which you need. Because all of your gateways are going to be posted in this list. Now, apparently now I have 4 gateways. I'm sorry, I got 3 gateways. 3 units are deployed in my local area network in the office now. So what I'm supposed to do now is I can simply make a choice, right? So if I want to deploy the TA3200 for this PBX, now I just need to go click on edit. So here we can absolutely well, you know, this is a TA32 handler, guys, so it's crazy. You got a 32 ports, right? So you can just totally make your option here. I'm going to show you more details here. I'm sorry. So you can see port range is from 1 to 32. Start extension, you can absolutely set one of your extension as the start extension, another one as the end extension, whatever. Then you can just go click on this, assign extension. So automatically, we're just going to assign those extensions for every single one of our interface. Or if you want to do this manually, that's also fine. So you want to assign actually to port 1, just do this manually. That's also supported. And later on, just go click on save. Then we're going to have the pop-up which tells you to reboot your gateway. So reboot your gateway, and congratulations, you can grab your analog phone for making a call, which is based on extension 1007. Well, I'm not going to do that, sorry, because I don't even know whose gateway is this. These gateways are all deployed in my office, so I don't even know whose gateway are this. So I'm going to skip this. So that's also the reason why I just suggest you guys use the auto provisioning if it's possible. It's just much easier. Okay. All right, now let's just switch it back to my presentation. I guess the next part I'm going to talk about will be the gateway for the FXO gateway. Okay, so have a look. Oops, I'm sorry. The FXO gateway, which is the gateway to connect with the PSTN provider, which is carrier. For example, like some carriers like AT&T, they just provide you the landline. Well, if you prefer to use the landline, a bunch of landlines, you can actually use your FXO gateway to connect with them. Then this is kind of like we're just going to use the gateway to work as the converter. You know, converter, same as Euro, same as what I mentioned in the previous session. It's just a converter. Help us to realize the IP to analog, analog to IP. That's it. So what we're going to do is very simple, to be very honest. You guys can see this integration is just based on pure chunk, which is a zip chunk. So we can simply jump into our P-Series system to create a pure chunk. That's just the solution. Now let's see the details. Okay, so I'm going to skip this page. Let's just talk about the details here. Now on your gateway, what you're supposed to do is, if this is the FXO gateway, when you jump in, you're going to go click on gateway. All right, then you're going to see something a little bit different because this is the FXO model. Then we're going to need to go click on add new chunk. We go for VoIP chunk, absolutely, because we need to add a new SIP chunk, right? So we go click on VoIP chunk, add a new chunk here. Now, here's the deal, guys. Chunk type, you have a couple of options there, but you will need to select service provider. Keep this in your mind, all right? Because on the gateway, we call it service provider. On the PBX, we call it pure chunk. That's it. So you guys need to select service provider. Then you can see the provider name, hosted IP address. Anyway, that's something we need to enter it here. So this is exactly the information we can get from the P-Series system. All right, now if we're going to deploy your gateway and the P-Series system under the same local area network, you will do this. You just get the private IP address of your PBX, drop it over here, and simultaneously, you will need to log into your PBX, create a peer chunk. Then you will just need to enter the IP address of your gateway. That's the basic logic. All right, now have a look. So once you figure out the gateway, the chunk connection, all right, same as Euro, you can get back to the status here to see the chunk connectivity, see this is working or not. That's pretty simple. Okay, and on the PBX, like I said, on the PBX, a little bit different is you're gonna need to create a peer chunk. So this is just something I want you guys to be careful. We got the different names. On the gateway, we call it service provider. Well, on the P-Series system, we called it pure chunk. Okay, so you choose pure chunk, then you're supposed to enter the IP address of your gateway. So it's like an IP address exchange. Okay, then we can also check the chunk status on the PBX as well. Okay, and next step will be the outbound route. This is very important because that's actually the purpose. That's the purpose why we need a SIP chunking, right? We just actually want to make use of our analog channels based on the gateway for making and receiving calls for the PBX. So over here on the PBX, we're going to create an outbound route to set our PBX, you know, to set something for our PBX being possible to make an external call going through this pure chunk to reach that gateway, then use the gateway's analog channel for external calls. That's what it is. So here, this outbound route, we choose the trunk, which is the pure trunk with our gateway. All right, then we select the extensions. A bunch of extensions depends on you. Then simultaneously, back on your gateway. I'm sorry, back on your gateway. You also need to configure something else. Just like I said, now we're supposed to handle this. We need to realize a call can be sent out from the PBX going through the SIP trunk to reach the gateway. Then we're going to use the gateway's analog channels for external calls. So back on the gateway here, we're going to go click on port group. All right, so you will need to create a group. This is optional, actually, depends on you. So if you have a bunch of ports, you have a bunch of channels, a bunch of analog channels. But the thing is, you just want to make use of all of them. All right, you don't want to use a particular one. You want to create a group. You just want to use any of them. So it is necessary for you to create a port group here. You just assign all of your FXO ports, means all of your analog channels in the same group, and then we're going to go access the route settings here. So you guys can see this is quite clear. We called it IP to port, port to IP. Now apparently now we need to create a rule for IP to port. All right, we need to handle some data transmission sent from the SIP trunk. Then we're going to need to handle this. We're going to need to handle this data transmission to the outside through the analog. So that will be IP to port, right? So the route name here, you can probably call this is from P570, right? Then the call source. The source will be, the source will be the SIP trunk you created before, all right? Then call destination will be the port group. That's why I mentioned you can create a port group, but it's optional. If you don't want to use the port group, that's fine. That means you're supposed to select a very particular interface, a very particular port. So it depends on you, by the way. So that's why I said we can choose to enable the port group, or we can just forget about it. That's fine. Depends on us. Okay. All right. The next step, we're just going to be able to realize external calls and handle incoming calls based on our gateway. So this is basically what it is. Okay. And then we're just going to need to take a reverse, take a reverse for handling incoming calls sent from the analog channels to the IP. Okay, so for this part, I guess it's not a big deal. Okay, so let's see, we got a question. Now let's have a look. All right, here's the question. Is NeoGate software we need to download from Yeastar? Okay, that's not a software, by the way. That's a hardware, guys. That's our gateway. That's a hardware. It's a particular model, which is called Yeastar TAFXO gateway. Okay, so it's a hardware, not a software. All right. Thank you for the question, by the way. Okay, now I'm gonna switch it to the live demo. I think we're gonna keep going for the next one. Okay, so anyway, that was the way how we handle the integration with the analog gateway. Now I'm gonna talk about the integration with our digital gateway and GSM gateway. So the analog gateway and GSM gateway and even the digital gateway, they're all the same thing. Like I said, it's a hardware. It's a particular hardware. I even get the interface for this particular hardware. So this is the way how I'm going to log into the system. All right. By the way, let me just switch the language. I think I will need to log in to change the language for this digital gateway. Okay, so let's jump in. Now, first of all, I'm going to talk about the digital gateway. All right, so this is the digital gateway. It's very similar with our analog gateway. All right, but the difference is this gateway can help us to handle BRI. I know this is not that popular, but we are just going to have a look. All right. So the analog gateway is actually the model for helping us to connect with the analog channels. For example, like your PST line. The digital gateway, well, it's just for helping us to connect with the BRI or E1. This model is going to be the TB series, which is the model for helping us to connect with the BRI. Not very popular, but let's just have a quick look. So how do we configure the integration? Whatever the model is, your analog gateway or digital gateway, usually when you jump into the gateway, you will do the same thing. First of all, you can go click on system here, so you can change the IP address. This is something very ordinary. All right, so network settings, same as URL. I guess mostly for the gateway, we don't need to make it so complex. We'll just need to simply set the IP address, make sure everything's gonna be okay, right? Then we're gonna go check on gateway here. So go click on gateway and you'll be able to see some details. So here's the VoIP settings, which is the place for you to create a SIP chunk, which is the place for you to create some parameters for your SIP settings. And you can also see the physical chunk. Now, because this is the TB series, so the physical chunk you have here, it's BRI. It's the BRI channel. All right. Now, if we use the FXO gateway, so here the channel you have here, it's gonna be the FXO chunk, which is the PSTN. So that's just the difference, okay? Now, another thing we have here will be the status. You can simply go check on status here to see the system working status over here. You can also check your BRI status, which is the BRI connectivity, network status, by the way, and your IP SIP chunk status. See, currently I don't have any SIP chunk. So if we want to figure out the integration, we're just gonna need to go click on gateway here. Go check on VoIP chunk, because we're gonna create a SIP chunk, right? So here, just need to add a new SIP chunk. And like I said, the chunk type here we're gonna use is gonna be service provider. So the provider name will be your P570, perhaps. The host name and IP address will just be the IP address of your, PBX. I guess it's gonna be 28.35. Yeah, 35. That's it. So I would just need to create a SIP chunk with my PBX. Simultaneously, when I switch it to the PBX, I will do something similar. Here, we're gonna go create a chunk. However, the chunk type here we're gonna use is not gonna be that. It's not gonna be anything else but pure chunk. So here, the IP address will be the gateway, which is gonna be, I think it's gonna be 37, maybe 37. I don't even remember it. Then we're just gonna configure this. The name here you can probably call this is the gate. This is the chunk to your TB series. All right. Then I can just name it as this. Then go click on save. Oops, I'm sorry. Click on save and apply for it. So this is the way how we configure this chunk. Pretty simple, right? That's it. Then back to your gateway. So if you want to figure out the gateway, the chunk connectivity, you can just go click on status here and check the IP chunk status, and you will be able to see this chunk is working. That's it. And the next step will just be the route settings, inbound and outbound. So on the PBX, it's going to be inbound and outbound. Well, on the gateway, we don't call it inbound and outbound because gateway is just a gateway. It's not a PBX. It's not capable to handle something in, something out, right? For gateway, whatever it is, it's all gonna be the inbound, right? So here we just called it route list. We call it route list. You will just need to add a particular route here to tell the system what is the direction from this side to that side, from point A to point B. Make this clear, that's enough. So here you can see match incoming calls. Call comes from, which is going to be your source, right? So the source we are going to use here will be the, the chunk, the SIP chunk we created with the PBX. And as for the destination, will just be the BRI chunk. So we're going to take calls sent from the PBX, then send it out by this BRI channel. This is basically the way how we configure the route on a gateway. All right. Now for the FXO gateway, just like I showed you guys before with the presentation, it's exactly the same way, exactly the same way. Now back on the PBX, things are going to be a little bit different. Now because on the PBX, we don't call it route list, we just call it call control, and we have inbound and outbound. So the inbound means we're going to handle some calls sent from outside from the gateway, right? And outbound means we're gonna send some calls out of the PBX to the gateway side. That's what it is. So this is just the way how we handle the integration plus the call control settings between each other. All right. By the way, do you guys have any questions about this? Okay, so I guess so far we're all clear. All right, now let's keep going. Let's keep going with another gateway. Another gateway, it's gonna be TG series. This is quite special. The TG model will be a little bit different with other models because this is the cordless solution. So it looks a little bit different and it's more advanced, I guess. Let's have a look. All the basic configuration, fundamental part will be the same thing. You jump into your gateway, you go click on system. This is the place for you to figure out the network settings, even some security settings for the gateway. Anyway, it's very similar with our configurations on the PBX, a basic maintenance, right? So like I just changed the IP address from the default 5.150 to this 28.38. This is something customized, right? I just changed it as this. So this is something very fundamental, not a big deal. And we can also go check on status here. See the working status, because this is the cordless solution. So we're gonna need to use the SIM card. So the status here, you can see that's a SIM card. If you got a SIM card inserted on the system, then you will be able to see the working status, see whether the SIM card is registered successfully or not. Anyway, that's what it is. And also, by the way, if you want to use the TG gateway, you're also gonna need to fix the antennas, guys. So this model is gonna be TG200. We're gonna have two SIM cards inserted on the system, which means we're gonna need two antennas for the signaling. That's it. For the signal, I'm sorry. And also you can check the network status, something very fundamental, system information. This is not a big deal. This is not a big deal. And as for the gateway's configuration, it's also very similar, but things are a little bit different because this particular model is the TG series. It's the gateway for GSM, sorry. So here, the list that we have is called mobile list. It's gonna be the list of your SIM cards. It's gonna be the list of your cordless solution, right? So if you wanna check the working status, you wanna configure it, you wanna reboot it, or you wanna change some parameters, anyway, you basically just change this particular slot for the SIM card. That's what it is. Even for advanced settings. Anyway, this is also just gonna be the place for you to set this particular slot. Like the PAN code, if your service provider, they just require for the PAN code to activate this SIM card. Just don't forget to enter it over here to unlock it. That's it, right? So this is just something a little bit different here. All right. Now, next step will just be the integration with our PBX. It's gonna be the same thing. Here we go click on VoIP trunk because all the interconnections between the PBX and the gateway is totally based on the SIP trunks. SIP trunking, totally based on SIP trunking. So here we're just gonna need to add a particular SIP trunk. And the trunk type here, you can see here. Now on the TG series, one thing a little bit different here is we call it peer trunk. We don't call it service provider. So if you have a TG series, you guys can have a check there. One thing a little bit different here, even the configuration portal, the interface looks a little bit different. The color, the design looks different. So here we call it peer trunk. Now you will just need to use the peer trunk. Same like what you have on the P-Series PBX. Exchange IP addresses for figuring out this interconnection. That's it. And the next step will just be the route setting. So route setting is much easier. We got a mobile to IP, IP to mobile. That's it, right? Back and forth, back and forth. Pretty simple. All right. So all this configuration, I guess, is not a big deal. Now, the only thing quite special on the TG gateway here is going to be the SMS. This is something special because this is the gateway of cordless solution of the GSM. So you can actually use the SIM card for short messages, which is going to be the SMS feature. We do support that. That's something so special. So here you can see, first of all, we got a send SMS. So if you want to use this feature, pretty sure you're gonna need to insert the SIM card, absolutely. Then you're gonna need to set some parameters like a country code. Are you gonna enable the country code for the SMS? If you need, just select the country, enter the country code. So we're not gonna send messages out of this particular country. Then enter the destination, or you can just add contacts. If you got a bunch of contacts, you can absolutely add it over here. I think this is quite popular for supermarket or a shopping mall. You know, those guys, they got the contacts, they got customer contact, right? So sometimes they just send some promotions to customers mobile, right? How can they do it? Pretty sure they're not going to do this manually. If they do this manually, that would be crazy. They actually use the SMS feature. So this is just a pretty good example. You can just send your promotion, whatever, to your customers by using this, right? That's it. Then just select your port, all right? So you got two SIM cards, like I said, which means you got two ports. Select your port, which port you want to use it, all right? Which SIM card you want to use it. And the next step will be the content. So edit the content. Whatever you want to send to your customers, you just need to drop it here. Like I said, promotion, advertisement, anyway, or commercials, you can add it over here. Or maybe just the announcement. For example, if this is the project for school, for kids, we want to send some messages, some announcement to parents. So we can add it over here. Then all the parents, they're going to be able to get the message sent by school, right? This is very, I think this is very popular for some scenarios like this, you know, like a shopping mall, like a school. Anyway, we can just use the SMS feature. All right. And by the way, another one we have here will be the SMS contacts. So if you want to upload some contacts information, you go access this place. So you will be able to upload all the contacts information on your system in advance here. Pretty short. Okay. Then we have outbox. So whatever you send out, you can check it over here. We also got the inbox. So it's same card, right? We can also handle some messages, some incoming messages, of course. Then here we got SMS settings. Have a look. So SMS to email, this feature is also supported. Every single time if we get some messages sent from the outside contacts, we can just enable SMS to email. So we're going to be able to check the SMS by email. That's the way how we handle incoming messages. All right. Okay, now keep going. And here, email settings. All right, so because this is going to be something based on email, right? Especially like SMS to email, we need a mail server. So here's going to be your email settings, your SMTP server and POP server configuration. You're going to need to add it over here. That's it. Okay. Well, I guess that's basically what it is on the TG gateway. Just one thing quite special here on the TG model, it will be the SMS feature. This is something quite special. Not like other gateways. The other models, they can just handle connection between IP and the analog or IP to the digital. That's it. So other models, other gateways are more like a converter, but the TG gateway, it can work independently. Absolutely. Yeah, SMS is a very nice feature. That's right. That's right. That's also the reason why I said the TG model, the TG gateway will be very special comparing with other models. And to be very honest, guys, I think the most popular model of our gateways will be TAFXS because for some projects, people need to use the FXS gateway. And the second popular model will be TG series because we have SMS feature especially. So this feature, it's very functional, pretty functional for lots of scenarios. So to be very honest, these two models are very popular for some projects. Okay. All right, so I guess that was all we have for today's session.